Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are we all?
All
Very
right,
good.
thank you.
I'm good.
Yeah?
Yeah, good.
Good. Everyone's had a good couple of weeks?
There's been a lot going on, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's been mostly good.
Yeah, it's mostly good for me. Yeah, busy but good. Yeah,
Good.
not. Yeah, good.
Do you know what? Obi, I love it. You kind of pause as to say 2 weeks.
Yeah.
What's been going on in 2 weeks? Has it even been 2 weeks? That's when
Yeah.
you know you've been busy.
Yeah, it does fly, but yeah, good. good.
Well, we were processing what day is it? Where am I?
Yes.
What's happened? Go on, James.
If I'm getting this right, we actually recorded 3 weeks ago. And they only released it 2 weeks ago.
Oh, you're releasing the secret.
That's top secret,
Come
that
on
is.
now, man.
Oh.
Come on.
Can't edit that out now.
So we're going to have to let you know. Actually, we do normally record on the Monday and you
We
get it
do.
on the Wednesday. But
Yeah, about
because we've made room for a lovely session at church reading through the Psalms,
Yeah.
we ended up having to shift it. So, yeah. James Dunbar, you let out the secret,
Trade
man.
secret.
Out the
that
bag.
is.
Whoops.
Do you know what? It doesn't matter, does it? You listeners don't even care. As long as you get it, you don't care where it comes.
And
So.
people could be listening to this in the daytime, and it's evening for us.
Yeah, it is.
Dark outside
How about that?
and wintry.
But there we go.
Yeah.
So we're here together again, which
We
is
are.
very, very good,
It is
Can I
good.
just say, it does come round really quickly.
doesn't it? Just
It does.
But I still enjoy it. I love it. I love it. I always
that's
get very
good.
excited when it's in the diary. Even though it's a madness, like all of us were discussing, it's madness trying to get here. The family
Well,
dynamics
you're
and
trying to
everything
get
like that.
kids fed and all sorts, aren't
Absolutely.
you? So-
Husband fed, kids in bed, make sure I've eaten myself. And but we're here and we're very excited to talk tonight about fasting. Now,
Yeah.
I want to put it out there straight away. None of us have got this down. So this is very much not us teaching you anything. This is going to be personal experience. This is going to be our journey with this and wanting to unpack this amongst ourselves. So we are probably all going to come at this at a different place, but I'm really excited to hear what everyone wants to say and what God has done through fasting. You know, we're going to open up the word. What does it say? Where have there been some places in the Bible where it's spoken about fasting? So if fasting is one of those subjects that you're just not sure of, we really hope that tonight will just intrigue you a little bit more to go and ask God what it is that he's saying to you about this particular subject. And this, again, Mr. Dunbar, I mean, I said you were on fire last time, but you really are. This is another subject that
Sorry.
totally is like putting flames on you, isn't it? You
I love
love
it.
it.
I do.
Yeah.
I've done it and done it and done it over the last decade, I suppose it's been. And it's such a powerful tool. I can't think of a better word than tool. But it's not the right word.
Is it worth us just explaining what fasting
Go for it,
is,
Stuart.
It's a good idea.
James, or Obi, or any of us? Just maybe we've got 4 different definitions. I don't know,
Yeah.
but that could be interesting, couldn't it? But because we're not talking about just doing things really quickly.
Uh-huh.
We're talking about something else other than that. And I guess it's entered people's consciousness now because of the kind of diet plans that you get, which are timed bits of fasting.
Oh,
and
the
not fasting.
intermittent fasting.
That's the one.
you
That's
mean.
the one I was thinking of. Intermittent fasting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, which is generally abstaining from food.
Yeah,
Which
it
is commonly how we would talk about fasting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking at James, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's what you'd understand.
Yes. There are different, going biblically, there are different types of fasting
Yeah.
in the Bible, as we alluded to before we were recording. I'm going to be biased this evening. We're talking about totally abstaining from food for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But there are other types of fasting.
Okay. So it's related to food in the
Yeah.
Bible. That's what we
Yeah.
think.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's the context. Okay. Great. Thank you. That's helpful. Just in case somebody was listening and thinking, fasting? What's
What's that? Yeah. Yeah.
So, come on then, Mr. Dunbar. When was your first experience with fasting and what has that done for you walking forward with fasting as part of your journey with Jesus?
Crikey, where do I begin? Okay, I think if I start with my first experience of fasting, which actually is unique, because every time I fasted it's different, but this was a particularly different type of fast to any other fast I've experienced. I can't remember why I was motivated to fast in the first place, but I ended up fasting for 7 days. I don't know.
Was this the very first one you
The
did?
very first
Okay.
one I did.
Wow.
And let me tell you, fasting for any amount of time is insanely difficult. It's absolutely crazy. And I wasn't sort of nursing my headaches or relaxing at home. I was going to work and continuing plumbing. And walking up someone's stairs when you've got no food in your system is nuts. You've got no energy. But this first fast was extraordinary because the presence of God, the power of God in the moment was insane. The present, it was incredible. All fast afterwards have not done that. I've always felt stuff happen
Interesting.
afterwards.
Okay. Yeah.
But just this first occasion was in the fast. So other fasts, I just get grumpy. I don't pray more. I pray less because I'm annoyed and
Okay.
the family
That's a
are
plot
not
twist.
happy when I'm fasting.
So it's not some kind of mountaintop experience for you.
Oh
and your
no,
whole
no,
family.
it's definitely the valleys.
Really?
But certainly for the families.
Okay.
So I generally don't tell the kids, but they figure it out quite soon. Yeah, they got used to what it means when Dad's fasting. I have to tell Shannon, of course, because there's meals involved.
Okay.
But going back to that first fast, it was 7 days.
Yep.
I went to church, and actually the kids were quite young, and it was your typical family Sunday morning. Come on, kids, hurry up, get dressed. Hurry up, we'll be late for church. Typical.
Yeah.
And we got to church exactly on time, 10 o'clock. And I wasn't thinking about God. I wasn't thinking about my fast. I wasn't that grumpy because after 7 days, your system's got more used to it.
Yeah.
And I was not thinking about God at all. I walked over. It was literally the threshold.
Why were you going to church if you weren't thinking about
That's a good
God
question.
whatsoever?
But that's not what I'm talking about. I walked over that threshold and I was physically knocked sideways by the power of God as I walked into church. And I was like instantly transformed to, oh my life, what was that? It's incredible. And it was, during the worship, it was literally the most profound worship experience I've had, equal to other experiences. It was incredible. I was in the throne room, and it was just the blessings of God on me because I'd chosen to fast. And in the middle of all this worship, I just took a moment to look around the room, and it was plain old worship for everybody else, just a normal, ordinary Sunday morning. And I thought, okay, you guys carry on. I'm going back to the throne room. I was at the back of church work. It would sort of be a bit more hidden. I was just on my face, and it was out this world. And actually, I asked for prayer. I'd run out of energy. Funny enough, the thing with fasting is you've got no physical reserves, nothing. And I think I'd overdone it on the Saturday, and my body just wasn't recovering. There was nothing to recover with. And I asked for a prayer for some seasoned prayers. Please, I want to keep going. And they sort of want the strength to keep going. They kind of smiled at me and said, maybe you should give up. They were kind of wise. So I broke my fast. I actually nicked some of the communion juice from the fridge of the kitchen of the church. It wasn't that day's communion juice. It was just juice that was there. I was like, and I guzzled this juice, and it tasted good. And when you break your fast for that sort of length of time, the first bit of food you taste is absolutely divine. Your body's like, whoa. So that was my first experience of fasting.
Okay.
And I almost had a split personality at the end of that. I knew that my flesh was like, oh my life, you're going to do this again. And my spirit was like, yes. Yes, there was something profoundly exciting and powerful about fasting. And I knew that was just going to be the first of many. And it was.
And what inspired you to do that?
I knew you'd ask me that, and this was like 10 years ago, and I can't remember why I can't remember, but I did think I was going to do 40 days.
Oh,
Because
did you?
Jesus did 40,
Okay.
so I did 40.
Okay.
And he made 7, sorry. I can't remember what it was that, what I said, what it was in me that said, right, I'm doing this. Pass, sorry.
Yeah.
Should have asked me that before.
No, I just wondered. It was interesting.
Good question.
Because
No
it was,
answer.
Yeah, it could be all sorts of reasons, couldn't it? I just wondered if there's a particular need that you were sensing or a desire that you had that led you to do that.
Good luck probing my memory. It doesn't work.
Okay, fine.
I can't remember.
That's all right. No problem.
I don't think there was any big need.
So that was the first time.
Because I think
for
I just
you.
wanted to try
And that sounds
it
like
or-
a really powerful experience.
Incredibly. Incredibly. And yeah.
So I can remember my first time fasting, first experience of it, and unlike I wasn't as spiritual as you to do 7 days at this point. This was just a 24-hour period, and it was at a time when I was trying to make some decisions in life, and I was 17 maybe, that sort of age, 17, 18, and trying to work out God's sense of God's call on my life, and should I go to uni or not. And it was at that time when I was feeling quite unsettled about it all. I've been around it's dating me. Been around what was then some polytechnics, because they're all universities now, aren't they? And looked at some particular courses that I was as interested in doing, and realising that it just felt empty, and sensing that God was calling me, beginning to kind of tease out this sense that God might be calling me somewhere else. And so I just committed for a day to pray and fast about this, and have repeated that pattern of linking wanting to hear from God more clearly with fasting and prayer at times.
Yeah.
So that's been a key for me at various points.
Did you feel you got your answer?
Not on the day, I don't think, but yes, I clearly got the answer I needed. And that pattern's happened again, actually, where, a bit like James said, you kind of think it's going to be a really spiritual experience, a time of clarity and hearing from God, and it's often not been that at all. But yeah, I have known God's leading in those times, but not usually on the day I'm fasting or the week or whatever it might be. Yeah, because you're thinking about other things sometimes, like, I'm really hungry. Why does it feel so uncomfortable, or whatever it might be? I mean, I think the times I've intentionally invested in prayer alongside fasting, then clearly you're trusting God that He's leading you. But yeah, I was at school still, so busy life with other ordinary things to do.
Yeah, my first time, I was about 19. I'd been approached about recording an album, and it was a guy over in Wales, a manager, who said, "Hey, I'll put 50% of the money up, you put 50% up." And I remember thinking, I don't really know if this is what God's asking for me to do. And it was the first time that I'd ever said, "Okay, Lord, I really like you to do." I was in that place of going, I really need to hear you. And I was asking the question. I was like, "Dad, I don't actually know what I'm doing. I don't really know. There's nothing here for me to know, right, this is how you do it. There's no formula." So I just really strongly found, say, to have breakfast and to fast until 5.
Okay.
And so I rocked about my day, and literally 5 to 5, I strongly heard from the Lord, "You have made money your God, and I want you to invest your money in this."
Yeah.
And then very clearly gave me direction after that point. I was living in Guernsey. I was earning fairly well, and because it's a tax haven, you get a lot more of your money.
Okay. Yep.
And I'd stored quite a lot of that behind me, and I invested the money. And I can't say that I felt it was particularly God saying to me, yes, recording the album was the right thing and that it was going anywhere. It was more that fact of going, hey, your money's become your God and become your security. I want you to invest this somewhere else. I mean, and there was no investment. I didn't get any money back from it. My career didn't take off, la la la. And then literally about a couple of months later, I had a car accident, wiped off my car. I was up in court.
Oh, gosh.
And my dad had had a nervous breakdown. The last bit of savings that I had was spent on a car for me to leave the island. And I left that island with not a single penny behind me.
Yeah.
And then came the provision of God. Then I saw every time I'd got down to sort of the petrol gauge of nothing, and I wasn't working. I was auditioning. I was doing all of these things. £5 would turn up, which was just enough to get.
Yeah.
So there was this real pinnacle moment for me of I was going to ask him the question about was this right to invest, and God was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
actually, let's deal with your money. And I don't think it had anything to do with the album. It was challenging my heart process with money. So it was really a profound time for me, and changed then the way that I valued money. And then fast forward until I then started to work at a company when I was about 21, and God limited, and he said, this is how much you're to save. And he gave me a figure, and I was not allowed to save past this figure. And that didn't come off my life until Andy and I got married.
Okay.
So yeah, isn't it interesting? I asked a question and he answered it
Yeah.
in a wonderful way, and it
Yeah.
was wonderful to go and record an album and have that, even though it's sitting in the loft doing nothing.
Okay.
But he totally transformed the way I saw money, and I didn't realise that I needed that.
That was a deeper principle at the time.
Totally.
Yeah.
I don't think it's springboard me into this massive wanting to fast more and more and more. I've
okay.
done it very few times because I felt like in that moment, it was a really sacred moment that I went to ask him, and he spoke so profoundly that now it's kind of like, Lord, I want to fast when you call me to fast.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Which I know in conversation with you over the years, James, that's very different to how you do it, because I think you do it as a principle of this is what we should do. Am I right?
No.
Oh, okay. You only do it when you feel led to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, well then I've misunderstood over the
Oh,
years.
Interesting.
And in fact, there might be a public fast, like the church may say fast for X, Y, Z, and I don't think I ever join in
Okay.
because the church asked me to fast, and
And on that basis
Wow.
alone, I'm not doing it.
exactly, and actually, I certainly can think about it, but actually,
Yeah,
I want
okay.
to fast when God asked
Yeah.
me to fast.
That, well, do you know what?
So it's God's
I
fault that you're really
apologise.
grumpy around your kids. now.
Like that, you joke.
And that's not what we're saying.
Well, I apologise, sir, because I totally
Yeah,
misunderstood that, because I thought you would have put it to the table that actually it's something that biblically is shown that, and that's what we should do. So that,
Part of that is because it's so hard.
yeah, it is.
I can't do it in my strength.
Yeah.
So I need God to say, do it, so that I know He's behind it, and on my own, no chance.
Oh, that's
How about you,
interesting. I love
Obi?
it. Yeah.
You mean my first experience of fasting? I'm probably a little child. I'm from Nigeria, and we went to church where you got whipped. They said, probably that's why I'm a bit weird with fasting, to be
Okay.
honest with you, because I think you would go to church, they would declare fasting. Adults usually do all day, like dusk till dawn, kind of 6 to 6 is normally called. Children will do 6 to 12, so they will give you lunch. And as a child, I normally wanted to eat my lunch. I didn't see the point in fasting, and I usually associate it with a bit of oppression. Why deny me food
Okay.
when I needed food? So my early experience of fasting wasn't that cool,
No.
if
Yeah.
I'm honest.
And
But-
what happens after 6 if you're an adult? Is there
So
then
they
a
normally
big
pray.
meal? And
So they normally would come together in fellowship,
Okay.
and they will pray, and then it was a beautiful thing. Now that I'm older and I can reflect back on those moments, it would be a shared meal. So it would
Okay.
be like a Last Supper. They would have a lot of prayer.
Yeah.
The thing I think there was a spiritual principle with those things. I know I'm averse to, and interestingly, now fasting is actually something I'm considering quite a lot in my spiritual journey, but I think God is speaking to me about it, but we'll get to that later.
okay.
And I'm weighing it to understand if it's legalistic or something, another thing I'm chasing to press deeper, or so I'm weighing it quite a lot. But yeah, that was my initial introduction to fasting. And then in the Nigerian culture, if someone was sick, people would gather and fast. There was always an expectation, and breakthroughs did happen. I'm not quite sure now if those breakthroughs happen because of the collective faith or because of the actual abstinence from food. By fasting in this context, I mean pure abstinence from food. But yeah, my experience about fasting was a lot of fasting was going on around me when I was young. God worked in so many of those areas. I saw people healed from sicknesses. The thing about the West sometimes is because everything is provided, we tend to be comfortable. In Africa, people haven't have any choice than to trust God, and you trust God you must with your life, and He shows up. So I've seen those contrasting views. However, I've also seen where people have made it so legalistic, and have declare 7 days fasting, every little thing. Leadership is fasting, they're declaring 5 days. You are not seen as a champ if you don't fast 7, 8, 9 days. And that put me off a little bit over the years. So that's really my experience. Personally, having that background, I've fasted. Like Joida, I'm not into fasting, if I'm honest. I just fast. Like, if in church, as a leadership, we decide to fast, for example, I fast. In moments in life, sometimes, personally, I do think there is something powerful spiritually powerful about abstinence from food over a sustained period. But for me, it's not just that abstinence from food is a set apart time. And this is where I grapple a little with the abstinence from food, because I do believe abstinence from food is powerful as a spiritual principle. But I do believe people also do intermittent fasting, which is abstinence from food to lose weight. People go on water diets for 7 days, longer than any fast, to lose weight. So at that point, for me, when I weigh those things, I think, like everything in our walk with God, is your personal, it's what you make of it personally that brings the difference. So I would fast, but I would try and create space as part of that fast. And I'm also looking around, like Stuart, you spoke a lot recently about fasting from social media, and that's all questions I've been asking myself. Where am I fasting from? So abstinence from food to honor God, but also abstinence from things that I enjoy, because food is used, because food is a natural craving of our body to crave for food. So, abstinence creates space and allows you build that spiritual discipline and allow God to move. And I'm also looking around and thinking, but there are other ways what other ways am I fasting and abstaining to honor God? Personally, that's my experience. Whether it will make me, having listened to James, I'm motivated to fast a little bit. The passion he has for fasting shines through, and I think it's a spiritual principle that's powerful for every Christian. Legalistic purposes of it, I'm not sure. I hold that loosely.
I really like when you were just saying then about sort of social media, tech, anything. I think anything when you're in relationship with God, if He's calling you to put something down to make room for Him, to fast that, I think is a good thing. Because He's going there personally. And I was very reluctant to do food fast, because I already knew that I had such a control over food in my life. And it could be very easy for me to create a really unhealthy pattern. And a really unhealthy stronghold. So I think you're absolutely right, checking that motive and checking why we're doing things. And when I think about sort of when I was in my 20s, 20 odd years ago, this intermittent fasting and things like that weren't a big deal. But even so, I was still really aware of my control over food. And now even more so, I think to myself, be really wise. Let's be really wise. There's a lot of other things that God could call us to give up to make space and room for Him. And all He's asking is that we're obedient to that we wouldn't just instantly go and get unhealthy. So I totally get that. And that was why it wasn't a practice that I was willing to do without being really wise, because I knew myself and I knew that this could be very unhealthy for me, physically and mentally.
That level of self-awareness is so good. It's really helpful to hear that, Joida, that actually that you were able to pause and reflect on your relationship with food anyway, and then link that with fasting, and whether that was right or not for you, just as a regular practice. Obviously, if God says to do it, you'll do
Yeah.
it. But that's really helpful, I think, because that's often not included in our thinking about it.
Yeah.
That what's going on in us and what relationship do we have with food, and is it an issue for
Yeah.
us? So that's really helpful.
Well, I'm just very thankful when you're walking with God and closely with God. It's amazing how He will bring those awarenesses of yourself.
Yeah.
If you're asking the questions and wanting to go
Yeah.
there, it's amazing how He brings those things to the forefront. And
Yeah.
I'm very thankful that He's always been very directive with me to say, come on, this is who you are, and know what you're doing. I haven't always wanted to listen, but 9 times out of 10, He will trip me over myself to say, hey, daughter, I've been saying this to you for a while. And you go, yeah. So, I'm very thankful. It's definitely down to His beautiful relationship with me that has brought that self-awareness for sure. And it gets deeper and deeper as you get older
Yeah.
of knowing myself.
So James, draw us on a bit from where we've got to so far.
I'm just thinking, actually, I'm thinking aloud. Everyone's called to different things in our walk with Christ. And here I am saying, this is great, fasting's amazing, but maybe that's just for me. And maybe it's not a calling for everyone. And it is for me. I've known it for a couple of years now. But then, maybe for other people, they're called to do other things and not fasting. Just a thought that,
Well, yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it?
I've just come up with it. So throw that out
That's
there.
interesting.
Is that a thing?
So I'm kind of assuming, as I've been listening, that none of us do this as a practice. So none of us have got fasting as a practice in their life. Okay. Because there's lots of people
Do you
that
mean
do.
like a, let's say, twice a week, like the Pharisees
Yeah.
used to?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm assuming that none of us do this
No, I
regularly.
don't. However, I listen to there's a very big entrepreneur I follow. I quite like people that are successful in business, that follow God and are open about their faith. So there's this lovely guy that I follow. I don't know him personally, so I don't know. I hold what I see on social media lightly. But he was talking about health and fitness and wellness and what we eat and nutrition and how we look after ourselves and exercise and all that stuff and how that translates to honoring our bodies. And it was a good take on that, saying the body God has given us, we have responsibility to
Yeah.
treat it right. And part of that honor is to mind what we eat.
Yeah.
As we honor God spiritually, we honor the body He's given us so that we are fit to serve Him the way He wants us to serve Him. And he did mention that he fasts every week, and he's been doing that for 20 years.
Wow.
Him and his wife, and he said even if you don't want to fast spiritually, fast physically helps you anyway. It helps you keep in shape
Okay.
anyway.
Okay.
But he then said that is a spiritual practice for him and his wife, revelation, and for him is a way he checks in
Yep.
weekly. It's
Okay.
an extended period that because so sometimes these things, in a way, whilst you can look at it as legalistic and saying why have a rule, when God prompts you, sometimes depending on where you are and what God is doing in your life, it also sometimes helps to create a bit of a rule for yourself to be able to say, like I'll quote Stewart when he said, if you don't have any alternative to Sabbath, why don't you start with the Sabbath as we know it?
Well, that was God's
Yeah.
challenge to me.
that was
That
good.
was so good.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't have any alternative to these new ways of fasting from social media or fasting from this and that, and if God is not speaking in any particular I'm just saying this because people are listening to us,
Yeah.
and we are coming at this from different angles. So I'm just saying, and I'm saying that to myself as well. If you don't have any cool fasting options out there, why don't you start with the basic one of, let me create a time where I abstain and have a dedicated time with God and see what He's saying. And maybe by doing that, we bring ourselves into a place, weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever, that we then bring something. And then maybe through that process, God actually does something different that we don't know, but we have to create that space rather than wait till we have figured out our own style and stuff. So just quoting Stewart, if you don't have any Sabbath, special Sabbath, start with the one He's giving us. That's how I just see that.
I'm intrigued, James, because I thought I'd be really pleased to hear you say what you just did about it being maybe it's just for you. I thought, oh yeah, that I would almost want you to say that. But actually, when I heard you say it, I thought, oh, I'm not sure how I feel about that now.
Yeah.
It was really interesting because there'll be lots of things that we enjoy doing or relate to more than other aspects of our walk with Christ.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that some of them aren't just good for us, whether we like them or not, and whether we relate to them or not. Some things are just good for you. And I'm, just responding, I suppose.
Question,
Yeah,
isn't it?
is it just one of those things that are just good for us? I've dug up quickly a list which comes from a guy called Richard Foster. He wrote a book called Celebration of Discipline years ago, and I've had it on my shelf and read most of it several times, and I don't think I've ever quite got to the end of the book. It's one of those ones I've struggled with. But there's a list of some items, and he's got meditation, as in Christian meditation. This is filling your mind with scripture. Prayer, fasting, study, simplicity, solitude, submission, service, confession, worship, guidance, and celebration. Those are his list of spiritual disciplines to follow. Now, you've related particularly to fasting. I suspect there's another couple on there that you'll go, I'm big into that. But there'll be others there that maybe would be really good for all of us, actually, to have a pattern of adding these things into our life because it would honour God, it would help us grow, and actually it's just a good thing to do as part of our regular spiritual walk.
Yeah, I've got the book on the bookshelf myself.
Do you?
Not opened it for a while. I certainly read the fasting chapter. It's funny, just talking about the subject makes me want to do it again.
Go for it.
So I think I might read that chapter. Might even read some of the other chapters.
Do you know what? I think that was really interesting, Stu, because I think I've grappled with this over the years of, Lord, what do you really want with this? Because in the Old Testament, there's people that fasted. I love it. I was reading it just a minute ago when Ezra was his journey to Jerusalem, and he's like asked them all to pray, to fast. We are going to fast and we're going to pray. And when you hear the reason why, because he was too ashamed to speak to the king and ask the king to send soldiers to protect them, was because actually he'd stood before him and said, no, we don't need your soul, because actually we believe that God is going to protect us. And then he was a bit like, let's fast and pray to just make sure that God knows.
Back up now.
Actually, God, you really are going to do this for me, aren't you? We are dead serious. We need you, so we're going to fast. And I really love that. And I think there's a lot of that pattern of things of doing that. Like Moses, when he was up and having the 10 Commandments at the time with God, he didn't eat or drink for 40 days as God was doing those things and downloading the 10 Commandments. And you see this kind of pattern and this thing of fasting in the Old Testament, and you start thinking, well, actually, I can't see that it's a bad thing. So I've grappled with this for a while of going, Lord, should this be something that should become a practice in my relationship with you? Not formulaic. I don't want to have to say the only way I'm going to hear from God is I'm going to fast. The only way I'm going to get something is because I'm going to fast. But actually being in that place that says, actually, Lord, do you want me to do this more? And I've asked this a few times, and I can't say that I've ever had any great big revelation on it, but I still grapple with this idea. And maybe what I need to do is just stop grappling with it and start doing it and see what he says. Because sometimes when you step into something, it's amazing how you get revelation. But yeah, it has been something for me of going, Lord, how do you feel about this? Is this something that you want us to do?
Let me whet your appetite some
Go
more
for it.
and share some more experience. So I've just shared the first fast and what that was. And the reward, if that's the right word, was in the moment. But I subsequently found with fasting, it's not in the moment. It's just, it's awful. It's hard slog and But then almost every time, something has happened after the fast. A week later, 2 months later, there's been a shift in my life spiritually, and something has changed. I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to talk about my motivation for fasting. I've done it the wrong way around. I'll get back to that. I think there's been one fast I can remember thinking, why? Nothing happened that I felt. I was like, I was just hungry for no reason. That hurt. Whereas other fasts, they're powerful things have happened. I said before we started recording, I wouldn't be the person I am
Yeah.
now without fasting. But that's not the reason I fast.
Mm.
That's the outcome
Of the
of
fast.
the fast, is that things shift, things change. I grow, I mature, etc. Important to cover the motivation. Well, first of all, during a fast, it's a psychological battle. Oh,
Yeah.
my life. There's nothing like it. You're trying to do it with pure motives, but there's a big part of it that goes, there's pride. It's big. And no one can tell you're fasting. But you're kind of walking around going, hey, look at me. I'm super spiritual. Wow. In the worst moments. That's not what you're supposed to do, but there is definitely a part of that. But ultimately, when my motivation for fasting, before I start fasting, again, into that weird psychological battle, is I just want to know you more, Jesus.
Okay. Yeah.
That's good.
I want to know you more. It's just a pure, I love you, Jesus.
So
And I
seeking
wanna-
that intimacy, which
It's an intimacy, it's a connection with Him.
Yeah.
That's usually what kicks off a fast, just wanting to know Him more. And then it will grow legs and turn into all sorts of strange things as you're going through it, but trying to keep it pure. And yeah, the end result is usually extraordinary, but not something I can put my finger on. It's not. It's not a formula.
And
It's a relationship.
It sounded like you said when you were speaking that the battle almost intensifies that pride battle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It gets more intense, and I've experienced that too.
Not before, but during.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
and particularly if you think it's going quite well. It's like, oh, look at me. And I've had that once where I got to the end of a longer fast for me, and I thought, oh wow, I've done it, and realised at that moment that I'd lost any benefit I'd possibly gained through the fast, just through that sense of pride. And it was humbling and really good to come back to the fact that all we do, every breath we take, is
Yeah.
because of God.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do without Him. So
Absolutely.
actually the ability to get to the end of an hour, a day, whatever it is, do whatever spiritual practice is all down to Him anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There have been occasions where it's a love-hate relationship. I
Okay.
cannot. That phrase means you can apply that to many things. I cannot express how much it means with fasting. It's so intense. I hate it, but I love it. And there's sometimes when I feel like I really want to fast, but I know God's not calling me to fast.
Yep.
It's in the flesh.
Yeah.
But I almost think God's put a seed in my flesh to ask Him if I can fast. And then I say, God, can I fast? But I need you to ask me to fast. I'm asking God to ask me to fast. I've had that at least a couple of times. And I'm thinking, why am I asking this? But I think it actually comes from God in the first place. And then I ask, and then I just get this, oh.
Do you have this with other of those spiritual disciplines I read out?
You'll have to read them out again.
Meditation, prayer, study.
Prayer, yes. Study, yes. Meditation, no.
Okay.
I'm
Do you cry out to God and say, I really want to
I had a
study?
I had
Please,
this
can I study more?"
bizarrest thing a couple of months ago. I couldn't get enough of the Bible. It was bizarre.
Why is that bizarre?
Because in the natural, nobody wants to read the Bible because it's boring in the natural.
What?
If only this was a
Outrageous.
visual podcast, you could
Goodness
see Stuart's face and the others.
James.
A lot of people struggle with reading the Bible
Yeah,
and say
no,
they
that's
find
really
it
true.
hard.
That's
They
really
do.
That's
true.
why
Yeah.
I'm, that's
yeah,
why
no,
I'm making that
absolutely.
comment.
Yeah,
There is something supernatural that happened to me
yeah.
12 years ago or so. Suddenly I fell in love with the word.
Yeah.
It's not a natural thing for the flesh
Yeah, yeah,
to want
It's not.
to read the word.
Yeah,
It
not.
isn't.
agreed.
yeah,
It's against counter the flesh.
Yeah.
yeah.
The spirit
100%.
inside of you has to rise up and become hungry. And this happened in an incredibly intense way a few weeks ago. I was like, what the heck is wrong with me? I just like, put down social media, put down your phone,
Yeah.
grab the paper Bible and just
Paper
like
Bible.
devour it.
Yeah. There's something special about a paper
Yeah.
Bible.
It's even
Yes,
more
there
exciting
is.
when you turn your phone off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
Linking
the
the
hardest
It
stuff.
didn't last. And now it's back to like, let's read the Bible, and it's quite fun, but not.
Yeah.
I think
intensely fun.
fasting from my phone will be more intense for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the strange thing than fasting from food.
Okay.
Mm.
I
Wow,
think,
that's a statement.
I think so. I think genuinely fasting from my phone will be the fast
Yeah.
for me. I mean, not that I have the level of control you have over food. I love my food, but I think once you get into the groove and depending on the day, if the kids magically travel and I'm by myself, it's something I think the fun one. So these are areas where, while I'm pondering on this whole fasting thing, I'm saying to God, I'm focusing more on, I think for me, it's more of the intentional time
Yeah.
with God and then asking God. So if it's fasting for you, then it's fasting for you. I think there is the spiritual principle. There's so many benefits. I've had preachers say massive big things about fasting. You know, ministries have transformed, life has transformed in
Yep.
fasting, and I can't argue with that.
Yep.
But for me, I think, if I'm speaking honestly, I think for me, when I look at fasting, I'm saying to God, above fasting, above meditation, above word, above reading the Bible, what does intimacy mean with you?
That's
What
good.
does my intimate moments mean with you? And what do you want me to come into that moment with? And what do you want me to not come into that moment with? I think that's what I'm battling
Yeah.
personally with. That's where I am with. And
Yeah.
we don't get it right. I don't get it right. I don't do it very often. But what I am noticing clearly is that life is busy. I'm crazy with the things I try to take on in my life. Stupid. But, to put it bluntly, but I think what I'm noticing is that, if I'm honest, the more I have those intimate moments, be it just in bed, be it running, and reflecting on my time with God, I think what has changed is not that I've suddenly become more spiritual or anything, or I raised the dead and stuff like that, as much as I would love to. But what I've noticed is that I'm acutely now more aware when I don't have those moments. So it's become a thing I am missing when I don't have it.
Yeah.
And that's something I've found humbling, and I'm thankful for recently in my work with God, that when I don't have those moments, I know I don't have them, and I
Yeah.
miss them.
Yeah.
And it's become a life-changing thing. Now all I go to God is saying, okay, so when I want to come into this moment, what do you want me to come into it, and what do you want me not to come into, so that we can have a better quality time? It's almost like romance,
Yeah.
a romantic relationship, so to say, and that's what I find so enriching in that journey. And that's honest.
I love
Yeah,
that.
really good.
That's
really
really
good.
lovely. I love the honesty of going, I want to come away with you. I want to be in your presence, but what do you want me to bring and what don't you? And being open enough for him to say, hey, son, this is what I want. Hey, it could be fast. Hey, it could be give up this. Hey, it could be just come away with me. I
Yeah.
love the fact that you're asking the question
Yeah.
because, he always answers.
He does.
I wonder if at some level, when it comes to fasting and some of these, what we're calling spiritual disciplines or spiritual practices, we tend to use the word practice now, probably rather than discipline, because
Yeah.
we don't like discipline. Because it's got a
Who
negative
does?
overtone
Yeah.
to it, a connotation. I wonder if there is just a sense that we're not great at denying ourselves anything.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
And it's
good.
good just to, actually it's really good to have times when we deny ourselves. We kind of
Yeah.
get into adulthood and you think, well, I can have what I like now.
Mm-hmm.
And we may never say that. We may never think we're thinking that, but we can live our lives like that
Yeah.
Yeah.
to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
And this is calling us back to denying ourselves in some form. And Jesus talks about denying yourself, picking up your cross and following me. And it seems to tap into that somehow, which is why there's a physical reaction. It's tough. And why there's an emotional reaction of, oh, should we do this? And yet there's some really good truth here about
Yeah.
just doing stuff that God's calling us to do
Yeah.
as a mark of obedience, even if we don't
Yeah.
understand it all.
Yeah.
Even if there's no guaranteed result at the end of it. I'm not sure Jesus said, pick up your cross and follow me. And as you pick up your cross, you'll feel this, that, and the other every day. Actually, it's this daily submission to Him.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think fasting and the other spiritual practices fit into that stream of saying, Lord, you're the Lord of my life. Come have your way. I'm sure that links in with that.
I love that, because I think that's taking it right to the simple.
Yeah.
Let's not overanalyze that. And just as you were speaking that, Stuart, I've thought, why have I taken the time to talk to Dad about it? Why haven't I just done it?
Okay, yeah.
You know, it's not going to do me any harm.
I think we wonder about being religious sometimes, a bit like Obi, you were saying
Definitely.
earlier, this sense of it's forced on you sometimes, and so then that does all sorts of things to us. It makes us question why we're doing it, and I wonder if we sometimes react and run away so much from the things that have been forced on us into what we call freedom from those things, but then we end up less free than we might be if we integrated some of them into our lives, but in a new way.
Absolutely.
Because we can be free not to fast and not to pray and not to read our Bibles
And not to do anything.
Not to do anything. And suddenly you discover that you're not free at all because you're actually just you're being affected by the culture around us and what everybody else says and thinks.
Yeah.
I think, James, you're onto something here for us, and it's helping.
It
I
really
had a
is.
quick look at, we all did, we chatted about some scriptures earlier, and interestingly, certainly in the New Testament and in the Old, there's not a lot about why we should fast. There's not a lot of a big theology of fasting. We know that Jesus fasted. In terms of in the wilderness, he certainly did. But then the disciples and Jesus get challenged for not fasting. So the Pharisees come and say, your disciples don't fast. John the Baptist's do. Why don't yours? And that's intriguing. And Jesus teaches a little bit about that. But then there's nothing else really as you read through Acts onwards. There's no teaching about it. There's not something that Paul highlights. All we read is that they did fast.
Yeah.
Acts chapter 13 and 14, the disciples were worshipping the Lord and fasting, and the Holy Spirit said, set apart for me Barnabas and Saul for the work I've called them to. And then after they fasted and prayed, they placed their hands on them. And then chapter 14, Paul and Barnabas then going out, appointed elders and appointed them with prayer and fasting, committing them to the Lord. But that's all I could find in the whole of the New Testament about fasting, outside of the Gospels where, hey, you're not fasting, and then Jesus talking about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Is Jesus 40 days the only measure of time we have? Is it time or length of a fast?
For Jesus fasting?
Or for anywhere in the Bible?
No, there's the time when I think, some of the Old Testament feasts, the Jewish feasts, there's fasting linked to those, so they'll be time-bound as well.
Okay. Right.
And the time that Joida mentioned about Ezra and others, they're fasting for a period that's sometimes defined for us.
Moses was 40 days. I think that's what he says
Yes,
when he was out.
that's true. That's true.
But there is, like you say, there's no massive teaching as to why they do it and what we should do. But it
which
is
is really
just
interesting,
this,
isn't it?
It's just this practice that they do. It seems to be this done thing, which is where you end up going, okay.
Particularly at key times.
Yes.
So the Pharisees were doing it, Jewish leaders were doing it at a regular pattern, twice a week. And the early church adopted that as well. So they fasted at regular times each week. That's very common practice.
Yeah.
I think one of the mistakes that our culture makes is it says somewhere that when you fast, you shouldn't let anyone know about it.
Well, Jesus teaches, doesn't he, about
he does.
not making a big show of our prayer and our
exactly.
fasting.
Yeah.
Don't make it obvious.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we take that too far. It means we can't even talk about it.
Well, I
and
did find
ever
that,
mention that we've ever fasted, because if we even mention I fasted 10 years ago, that goes against that scripture. So you have a difficulty that people are fasting and not sharing their experiences of fasting because you're not supposed to talk about it.
Well, I
But
had a practical challenge with that. Sorry to interrupt you, but the practical challenge is, well, how do you navigate that when either you're, for me as a teenager at home with parents, how do you navigate? I can't tell anyone, but I'm going to not eat. What do you do with that?
Yeah.
So you have to come up with, you have to satisfy that one. And equally, if you're living in a house with somebody else, it kind of has to crop up somewhere, doesn't it? Because if you normally share a meal. But even that, I've had that same awkwardness around, I'm not meant to say anything. And I don't think it's like that. Jesus is saying, don't
Not
make a
at all.
show of this, don't show off, don't bring attention to yourself, don't make yourself out to be more spiritual than someone else.
And this is what this podcast is about. We're talking about it openly, aren't we?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
brilliant discipline.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
Yeah, that's why I think possibly our culture doesn't do it very much because no one talks about it.
No one talks
but
about
we
it.
should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should talk about it as a regular practice that's good to do. That's a way of drawing near to God. Certainly, it seems in the Book of Acts, it's a way of linking prayer with this other aspect of fasting at key times of appointing people to leadership and being called by God, and so it does feature around those kind of times. But there's something good in it, life-giving.
It is.
This is going to be interesting, gents. This is going to be interesting now we've had this as to what we feel and whether actually we go, come on, let's step into this. I'm going to make this something as part of my journey with Jesus. And because I'm already thinking to myself, stop frigging questioning it, daughter, and crack on. Just
Christmas
do
Day
it.
is a great day to start. Tell the family. That's it, folks.
My dad, bless him, would be like, you what?
Today, of all days.
You're not joining in with the Prosecco? What is wrong with you, daughter?
Well, you joke about that, but actually, when I'm working, it's hard to fast. So actually, the time it's good to fast is when I'm not at work.
Okay.
And actually, usually there's 2 weeks off over Christmas, isn't there?
Okay. Right.
So actually, I thought, oh, what a good time to fast. But well, you can't, can you? You can't fast.
course
I've
you
never.
can.
You can, but it's going to be
Well,
it's going to be hard.
Let us know how you get on.
Yeah. Well, do you know what, guys? I love talking about a topic that there's no formula. There's no right or wrong way of doing
there
things. And I really hope that as you've been listening to us talk, we haven't got the answers. We're all still trying to work this out. Although, forgive me, James, I clearly got it wrong over all of these years, that I thought it was something that you absolutely stood like, this is what we should do. So I've learnt something after all these years of friendship that I got that wrong. So I apologise.
go.
But I love your openness, guys. And I love the fact that, do you know what? We're 4 of us here that have been doing a lot of life with Jesus, and we're still working this out. You know, we're still working it out. But I think that we are very encouraged tonight amongst ourselves to say, let's do this, put this into practice, go there. Like Obi was saying, it doesn't have to be food. It can be something else. We've probably all fasted something else. I know I fasted TV, but that's another story.
Preferably something that you're doing normally.
Yes.
So for some of us, it's easy to fast from Brussels sprouts, for example, but that's kind of cheating if you're not eating them anyway.
And checking your motive.
Checking
Checking your motives as to why you're doing
Yeah,
it.
that's so good.
We've got to really check that out, making sure that we're right. I mean, I was just reading from Isaiah, I think it was 38.
58?
58. Read it. If you're going to go into fast, read it, because it really calls out attitude.
It so does. And not missing the big picture of actually God's call to justice and righteousness and
looking
not
after
doing
people.
something just to be religious and then forgetting the bigger principles. So
Absolutely.
I need to give a health notice.
Okay.
Let's just say that someone listening to this goes, you know what, I'm going to do 40 days. Let's do this. Before you do something like that, you really need to research fasting and the health aspect of fasting. I've done a bit of research. Your digestive system, over the course of days, 10 days, for example, is a good time, your system shuts down and goes to sleep. Your digestive system is switched off. All those enzymes and bacteria, they've gone, they're not doing their thing. So if after a prolonged fast you decide to go, excellent, I'm going to the steakhouse and have
that's
steak
not
and
wise.
chips, you can kill yourself. It's as serious as that. You can kill yourself.
you can certainly do some. It's not pleasant at all, is it? To do
No,
that.
I'm serious. You can.
You
kill
can
your-
kill
You
yourself? Okay.
can kill yourself.
Well, that's a dramatic
There.
way to end the podcast. Good night, folks.
There you go. Off you go.
Well, that
Go
is
fasting.
why I thought it was important to
Yeah.
mention it.
And that's a really good point, James. Actually, we hadn't mentioned that. On health advice, if you are planning a longer one, it's often recommended to go and chat to your GP and let them know,
Yep.
Particularly if you've got medical conditions
Absolutely.
and talk that
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you have
through. And if you're pregnant,
medications,
you can't, and all sorts of things. So
Yeah.
be wise
Absolutely.
and sensible. God designed our bodies amazingly, and He's
100%.
put wise people around us to help us with all this stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely. I love that. So don't die, basically, is what Jim was saying. What a wonderful way. Be encouraged. Just don't starve yourself and then eat so much you die. Thanks. No, in all fairness, go before the Lord. Have some time with him.
Yeah.
Fast whatever it is that's taking over your life and take take some time aside to say, right, Lord, I'm going to give this up, whether it's food, whether it's social media, whether it's TV, whether it's chocolate, whether it's something that you know is taking a bit of a root in your life that takes you away from going into his presence wholeheartedly, undividedly, and see what he does, see where he takes you, see what he leads you to, because I think all of us can say openly that the more time you spend in his presence, the more he reveals himself to you. And I don't know about you, but I'm up for some of that. So be encouraged, and we look forward to sharing some more of our craziness, thank you James, next time we get to speak to you. So have a great couple of weeks, guys. Have a lovely time, you lovely men,
thank
and
you.
have a blessed week, and we will see you in a couple of weeks' time.
Thank
Good
you very
night.
much. Good night.